The girl behind the curtain. The cafe was small, hidden in a quiet corner of West Hollywood. Most people walked past it without noticing. It didn't have shiny signs or polished floors, but the people who worked there tried their best to bring warmth into that small space. Inside, behind the counter, there was a girl named Emily. She was 19, shy, and always wore her long brown hair brushed to one side of her face. Every time a customer entered, she stood straighter, tried to smile, and silently prayed no one would stare too long. Emily had a scar on her face. It ran from the edge of her left eyebrow down to the middle of her cheek, soft but visible, like a story the world kept trying to read. She got it when she was a child. A car crash. Her mother didn't survive. Since then, the scar had become a shield. She believed it protected her from judgment, from questions, from the world's sharp eyes. But deep inside, she felt small, invisible, unworthy. Her co-workers were kind, but they didn't know her pain. They'd joke around, invite her to hangouts. She never attended. She'd say she was tired. They never pushed. Only one person at the cafe noticed something more. An old dishwasher named Tommy. He had worked there forever, spoke little but watched everything. Sometimes he'd leave a cup of tea for her on break. Sometimes he'd say, "You're doing good, kid," and Emily would nod, barely meeting his eyes. One Tuesday afternoon, the cafe buzzed with quiet energy. Outside, the sky was pale blue, the streets humming with slow traffic. Emily was wiping a table near the back when she heard the door open and close. She didn't look up at first. She rarely did. But then she heard murmurs. Excitement. Someone whispered, "Is that Keanu Reeves?" Her hand froze on the cloth. "No way," someone else said. "It's him." Emily turned, just slightly, and yes, there he was, standing near the door wearing a black jacket, jeans, and a calm expression that somehow warmed the room. He wasn't surrounded by cameras or bodyguards. He had walked in like a regular person, like he just wanted a coffee. Her heart pounded, not because he was famous, but because for the first time in months, someone new had entered. A person who didn't know her scar, didn't expect anything, and she had to serve him. Emily's manager, Julie, rushed to the counter. "I'll take this one," she said quickly. "Just give me the menu board." But Keanu raised his hand gently. "I'd rather talk to someone who works the floor," he said, voice soft, kind. "Maybe the one cleaning tables?" Julie hesitated, looked back at Emily. Emily stiffened. "Emily," Julie said. "Can you?" Emily nodded slowly. Every step toward him felt like 1,000. She kept her eyes down, holding the small notepad tightly. When she reached his table, he smiled at her, not like a celebrity, like a person. "Hi," he said. "Hope I'm not making your day harder." She shook her head, voice barely above a whisper. "No, not at all." He looked at her name tag. "Emily, that's a beautiful name." She blinked. No one had said that to her in years, not without looking away afterward. "I'll just take a coffee," he said. "Black, and maybe, whatever, dessert you like." Emily didn't speak. She felt her breath tighten. He noticed the silence. "Only if you're okay with that," he added. "I'm just looking for something sweet." She nodded and walked away. In the kitchen, Tommy noticed her pale face. "You okay?" "It's him," she whispered. "It's really him." Tommy nodded slowly. "Just a man who drinks coffee," he said. Emily smiled for the first time that day. When she brought back the coffee and a slice of almond cake, she placed them down gently. She tried to turn away quickly, but Keanu stopped her. "This your favorite?" he asked, pointing to the cake. She nodded. "Good choice," he said. He took a bite, then looked up. "You've got kind eyes, Emily." Her breath caught. "Sorry," he added. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." She shook her head. "No, it's just, no one ever says that." He frowned slightly, like her words didn't sit right with him. Then he leaned in, voice lower, calmer. "Can I tell you something?" "Strange?" She hesitated, then nodded. I grew up thinking my voice wasn't strong enough, he said. I'd stutter sometimes. I'd stay quiet. People thought I was awkward. Some even laughed. I kept my head down. But one day someone told me, "You don't have to speak loud to say something important." Emily looked into his eyes. They were soft, kind, and honest. "I think you understand that," he said. Her fingers trembled slightly. Her hair had shifted and the scar on her face was now visible. Keanu didn't look away. Instead, he reached out his hand and said, "This place feels better with you in it." Emily didn't understand how tears could fall so fast or how someone she didn't know could make her feel so seen. But that moment cracked something inside her, like the sun peeking through thick clouds after days of storm. She whispered, "Thank you." Keanu smiled. "Thank you." Across the room, Julie stared, confused. Tommy, however, just kept washing dishes with a quiet nod. The cafe was still the same. But for Emily, something had changed. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like hiding. Whispers behind the scar. The next morning, Emily walked into the cafe earlier than usual. Her shoes tapped softly on the tiled floor, and the smell of fresh croissants lingered in the air. The scar on her face was still there, of course. It always would be. But something inside her had shifted, like a curtain had been pulled just a little, letting in light she never expected. She hadn't slept much. Her mind replayed that moment over and over. The way Keanu had looked at her, not with pity or curiosity, but with warmth. How his words gently peeled back years of quiet shame. She had never been the kind of girl to believe in turning points, but maybe this was one. Julie noticed her right away. "You're early." Emily nodded. "Couldn't sleep." Julie raised an eyebrow. "Was it because of yesterday?" Emily said nothing, but the tiny smile on her lips gave her away. By noon, customers filled the cafe, and Emily moved through the room with more calm than usual. She didn't hide her face as much. Her hair still fell naturally over it, but she didn't adjust it every 5 seconds like before. Even when someone looked directly at her, she didn't panic. The whispers began around lunchtime. Not cruel ones, just curious. Customers talking quietly at tables, co-workers exchanging glances. It wasn't every day a Hollywood star sat down and shared cake with a quiet waitress. "Do you think they knew each other before?" one of the baristas whispered. "No way," said another. But he talked to her like he really saw her. Emily heard bits and pieces but pretended not to. The attention made her nervous, but it wasn't sharp or mean. It was soft, like people finally noticed she was more than just the girl behind the mop bucket. And then the unexpected happened. At exactly 1:14 p.m., the door opened, and in walked Keanu Reeves again. This time, Emily froze completely. Julie rushed over. "Mr. Reeves, welcome back," he smiled politely. "Thanks, just here for coffee. Is Emily working?" Julie turned to Emily, whose feet refused to move. "Yes," Julie said carefully. "She's here." Keanu walked up to her slowly. Not a grand entrance. No big smile. Just steady eyes and a gentle nod. "Hey," he said softly. "Hi," Emily whispered. "Mind if I sit again?" She hesitated, then pointed to the same table as yesterday. They sat. He ordered coffee just like before. This time, no dessert. But before Emily could walk away, he said something that made her pause. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday." She blinked. "I didn't say much. You said no one ever says that. And it stayed with me." He didn't look away from her. "It reminded me how many people go through life feeling unseen." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. She glanced around. People were watching, pretending not to. Still, she sat across from him. Only for a moment. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a notebook. It was small, well-worn, filled with scribbles. "I keep this with me," he said. "Whenever I meet someone who makes me think, I write something down." He opened it and read out loud. She hid a part of her face, but not her light. Her light was the part that warmed the room first. Emily didn't breathe for a second. "I wrote that last night," he said. Her voice trembled. "Why would you write that about me?" Keanu gave a half smile. "Because you reminded me how brave, quiet people are." Someone from another table tried to snap a photo. Keanu noticed. He gently waved it off and kept his eyes on Emily. "Do you like books?" he asked suddenly. She nodded. "What kind?" "Stories with broken people. Who still try?" He nodded. "Those are the best kind." He pulled out a small paperback from his bag. "I just finished this one. It's about a girl who thinks her scars make her unlovable. Turns out they make her unforgettable." He slid the book across the table. Emily picked it up slowly, tears rising again. "You're not invisible, Emily," he said. "Your story matters, even the painful parts." The rest of the shift passed in a blur. He stayed for an hour, didn't take selfies, didn't act like a star, just talked. When he left, he tipped quietly and thanked her by name, and this time she whispered back, "Thank you for seeing me." After he walked out, Julie approached. "What's going on, Emily?" Emily looked down at the book in her hands. "I think someone's reminding me I'm allowed to be seen." And then, out of nowhere, a customer she had never met before said, "You're the girl he wrote about?" Emily didn't know how to answer, but Tommy stepped forward, drying a cup. "She's been here the whole time. People are just starting to notice." Emily stood taller. For the first time, she didn't brush her hair over her scar. She just let it be, because maybe it didn't make her less. Maybe it made her real. The day they laughed, and she didn't hide by the end of the week, Emily had changed. Not loudly, not in ways the world would shout about, but quietly, like a flower that turned its face toward the sun after months of shadow. She still worked the same shifts, cleaned the same tables, and brewed the same coffee. But now, she did it with her shoulders straighter and her chin a little higher. Keanu didn't come back the next day, or the one after that. Part of her wondered if she had imagined the kindness, the words, the notebook. But the book he left behind, creased and worn, was still in her bag, and every night she'd open it, reading lines that felt like he had chosen them just for her. "Your scar is not the story. It's just one sentence in the book of who you are." She began to speak a little more to customers, smile a little longer, and some noticed. One old man left her a note on a napkin. "You remind me of my daughter." She had strength in silence, too. But not everyone was kind. One Saturday afternoon, two women walked into the cafe. They wore expensive clothes, loud perfume, and had laughter that echoed off the walls. Emily had seen them before. Rare customers who ordered complicated drinks and always complained about the temperature. As Emily placed their tray on the table, one of the women looked up, squinted at her face, and whispered to the other, "Oh, dear, look at that." The other one giggled. Someone should tell her to wear makeup, poor thing. Emily froze. The scar on her face burned like it had just appeared. Her hands tightened on the tray. Old fear crept in. Shame. The voice in her head, the one she thought had left, began to whisper again. "You don't belong here. You're a mistake." But then something else rose up inside her. Keanu's words. "You're not invisible." Emily straightened her back. She placed the drinks gently in front of them, looked the women in the eyes, and said, "I hope you enjoy your order." They blinked, and in that moment she didn't cover her face, didn't look down, didn't rush away. She simply stood, and they didn't know what to say. She walked back to the counter, and Tommy was watching. "You didn't run?" he said. "Not this time," she replied. Later that evening, the cafe was nearly empty when the door opened again. Keanu Reeves stepped in. He looked tired, like he'd come from somewhere far. But when he saw her, his eyes softened. Emily blinked. "You came back." He nodded. "I said I would." This time, she didn't just take his order. She sat across from him for a few minutes during her break, hands still trembling slightly. "People were talking about you," she said quietly, "after you left." "Let me guess," he smiled. "Some thought it was sweet, others just wanted photos." "Some were kind," she said. "Others, not so much." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he asked, "What did you feel?" She took a deep breath. At first scared, then proud. Keanu leaned forward. "That's the thing about scars. They don't make us weak. They show where we've healed." Emily looked down at her hands. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said. "Some days it still hurts. But each time you show up anyway, you're winning." Emily's break ended too soon, but before she stood, he handed her something. Not a book this time. It was a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Something for you to read when the voice in your head gets loud again." She placed it in her pocket, promising herself she wouldn't open it until she was alone. That night, after closing, after cleaning the last table and turning off the lights, Emily sat on the back steps of the cafe under the soft hum of a street lamp. She unfolded the paper. In his handwriting, it read, "Dear Emily, you are not the scar. You are not the silence. You are not the whispers behind your back. You are the light that stayed. The girl who served kindness even when the world didn't. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth dimming for." She covered her mouth with one hand, and for the first time, she didn't cry from pain. She cried because someone saw her. Not as damaged, but as whole. The girl with the light Emily woke up before the sun, but this time not because of nightmares or heaviness. Something inside her buzzed quietly, like her heart was finally trying to sing. She read the note from Keanu again, folded it gently, and tucked it in her wallet where old memories used to live. Now, something better was taking root. At the cafe, things were still simple. Coffee pots brewing, chairs being wiped down, customers coming in and out. But something about how people looked at Emily had changed. They smiled more. They greeted her by name. One even asked if she was the girl from the story. She didn't know what story they meant. Maybe the one where she stood tall after being laughed at. Or maybe just the one where Keanu Reeves spoke to her like she mattered. But she didn't ask. She only smiled back. Julie called her into the office mid-shift. Her voice was tight and she tapped nervously on the desk. "So, something odd happened this morning?" Emily's heart dropped. "Did I do something wrong?" Julie shook her head. "No, not wrong. Just unusual." She turned her laptop around. A video was playing, grainy footage from someone's phone. It showed Emily placing coffee at Keanu's table. The audio wasn't clear, but it caught a few words. "You're not invisible." Beneath the video were thousands of comments. "Who is she?" "This girl is beautiful. The way he speaks." To her, "Wow," I cried. "We all need a Keanu in our lives." That scar doesn't make her less, it makes her real. Emily covered her mouth, her breath shallow. Her hands shook again, but not from fear this time, from disbelief. "It's gone viral," Julie said. 500,000 views in a day. People are asking about you, they're sending letters, some want to know if you'll talk on camera. News stations are reaching out. Emily stared at the screen. The girl in the video didn't look like her, but it was. That evening, she stood outside the cafe and looked up at the sky. She thought about the years she spent hiding, about the cruel words in school, the mirrors she avoided, the boys who laughed, and the friends who walked away when things got hard. For so long, she believed she was too broken to be seen. But now the world had seen her, and the world hadn't turned away. Later that night, a black car pulled up outside. Keanu stepped out quietly, without cameras, without noise. He walked up to her with a smile. "You okay?" he asked. Emily didn't know what to say. She just nodded. He looked up at the sky with her. "A bit much, huh?" "I don't understand," she said finally. "Why me?" Keanu shrugged gently. "Why not you?" She turned to him, voice trembling. "Do you know how many years I thought I wasn't enough? That I was something people had to look away from. He looked at her scar without flinching. You believed a lie for a long time, but it felt real. I know, he said. But sometimes, it takes just one person to remind you of the truth. Emily didn't speak. The wind passed softly between them. He reached into his jacket and handed her something small, an envelope. I want you to have this, he said. Inside was a letter. Not typed, handwritten again. Dear Emily, you're not just a girl with a scar. You're a story waiting to be told. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. Write your chapters boldly, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. Because those are the ones that will show someone else how to stand back up. Emily wiped her cheeks. Keanu nodded. One more thing. What? Next week I'm speaking at a youth foundation event. I want you to come with me. Speak with me. Her eyes widened. Me? Speak? In front of people? Yes, he said. Because someone out there is hiding right now, just like you were. And they need to see that it's possible to come out from the shadows. What if I can't do it? She whispered. Keanu smiled. Then I'll be right there and we'll do it together. For a moment she didn't answer. Then she said the words she never thought she could. Okay, I'll do it. A week ago, she couldn't meet her own eyes in a mirror. Now she was about to stand on a stage with Keanu Reeves, and not because she was famous, but because she had something to say. The stage that saw her, the auditorium was quiet, filled with the hum of whispers and soft lights hanging from the ceiling like stars waiting to wake. The Youth Foundation event was meant to inspire, to heal, to show the broken they weren't alone. Rows of chairs were filling with teens and young adults. Some nervous, some curious, some looking like they hadn't smiled in weeks. People who had scars no one could see. People who felt small in a world that asked them to be loud. Emily sat backstage, heart pounding against her chest. She wore a soft blue sweater, the kind that hugged without choking. Her hair was tied loosely, and for the first time in years she had pulled it back fully. No curtain to hide behind. The scar was visible, raw, honest. Keanu sat beside her, calm, steady. He could feel her hands shaking in her lap. You don't have to be perfect out there, he said quietly. Just be real. She nodded slowly. What if they stare? Then, let them, he replied. Let them see what strength really looks like. The host walked over, clipboard in hand. You two are up next. Emily stood. Her legs wobbled, but she didn't sit back down. As they stepped into the light, the crowd hushed. Phones didn't rise. Cameras didn't flash. It was like the room itself respected the moment. Keanu walked to the microphone first. Hi, he said simply. I know most of you came here for hope, for some kind of answer, or maybe just to feel a little less alone. I'm not sure if I have answers, but I do have a story, and it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to someone much braver than I am. He looked back at Emily. Her name is Emily. Emily stepped forward. For a second she couldn't breathe. Then she saw one girl in the front row, maybe 15, with acne scars and a hood pulled over her head. Their eyes met and the girl smiled, small and scared. Emily took the microphone. Hi, she whispered. A long silence followed. I used to think my face made me unlovable, that if someone saw the scar they'd see failure or pain or something ugly. I spent years hiding. Not just my face, but my voice, my ideas, even my laughter. People leaned in. Some held tissues already. Then one day, someone came into the cafe where I work. Someone who didn't look away, who didn't flinch, who told me, "You are not the scar." She turned slightly to look at Keanu, who nodded. He reminded me that quiet people can carry big stories. That kindness is louder than fear. That being seen isn't something to run from, it's something to grow into. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. I still have bad days, I still look in the mirror and see that old fear. But now, I also see light. I see someone who didn't quit, who showed up anyway. And if I can do that, maybe you can too. The room fell still. A single clap rose from the back. Then another, and another, until the room stood in applause. Tears flowed freely, not just from the audience, but from Emily herself. But this time, the tears didn't carry shame. After the event, people lined up, not to meet Keanu, but to talk to Emily, to hug her, to thank her. A boy whispered, "I have burn marks on my arm. You made me feel normal." A girl said, "I stopped going to school because of my face. Not anymore." Another simply said, "Thank you. Thank you for standing there." Emily looked at Keanu, overwhelmed. "What is this?" He smiled. "It's the truth finally catching up to you." They left the auditorium late, the stars above, glowing gently in the night sky. Emily sat on a bench outside, her head leaning back. "I feel like I'm dreaming." Keanu sat beside her. "Then let's stay in the dream a little longer." She turned to him. "You know you changed my life, right?" He shook his head. "No, Emily, you changed your life. I just reminded you that you could." She didn't know how to respond, so she didn't. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time since the accident, she didn't feel like a girl with a scar. She felt like a girl with light. When the world saw her, 2 months passed. The video of Emily's speech had been uploaded by someone at the Youth Foundation. Neither she nor Keanu planned for it to go public. But it did. And the world reacted with open arms. Millions watched the quiet girl with the scar speak her truth. It was shared across the internet, posted on news pages, blogs, and mental health forums. Messages came in from all over the world. People who had been hiding, people who had been hurting, people who said, "You made me feel like I belong again." Emily started receiving invitations, small ones at first. High school counselors wanted her to speak to students. Then a local charity reached out, asking if she'd share her story with women recovering from trauma. Each time she hesitated, but each time she said yes, and each time she left a room full of people in quiet tears and standing applause. She didn't do it for the praise. She did it because she remembered how it felt to be invisible. Because once, upon a time, someone took her hand and reminded her she had value. Her days at the cafe continued. The work felt different now. People came in not just for coffee, but to meet her. One man left her a small notebook and wrote on the cover, "You gave me courage to face my own mirror." Julie, once skeptical, now stood back in awe. She even added a framed photo on the wall of Emily and Keanu standing on that Youth Foundation stage. Below it, a little plaque read, "The girl who spoke light into the darkness." Keanu stayed in touch like a quiet mentor. He'd check in with simple texts. "How's your heart today? Remember, your voice matters." The world needs your kind of brave. Sometimes he would visit the cafe, always quietly, never drawing attention. He'd sit at the same table, order the same coffee, and listen to whatever she needed to say that day. But one day everything changed. A famous talk show invited Keanu for an interview. The host brought up Emily's story. They showed a clip of her speech, and the host asked, "Who is she really?" Keanu leaned forward and said something that echoed around the world. "She's the bravest person I've ever met." By the next morning, Emily's life transformed again. Her inbox overflowed. Publishers wanted her to write a book. Charities offered her roles. A university asked if she'd speak at graduation. But she said no to most of it, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she had one thing left to do. One afternoon, she returned to the town where she grew up, where she was bullied, where kids used to laugh and whisper and throw names like knives. She walked through the streets slowly. The buildings looked smaller now. The fear had faded. She stopped outside her old school, the same spot where she once sat alone every lunch break. And there, sitting on the same bench, was a little girl. Maybe 9 or 10. She had a long scar on her forehead. Fresh, still healing, and she was hiding her face behind a book. Emily sat beside her without saying a word. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the girl whispered, "You're the lady from the video." Emily smiled gently, And you're the girl from this bench." The girl's eyes were full of tears. "They laugh at me here." Emily looked forward and said softly, "They laughed at me too. But laughter doesn't decide your future. You do." The girl looked at her, broken and curious. "How did you stop being scared?" Emily took her hand and replied, "I didn't. I just started walking. Forward anyway," the girl whispered. "Am I ugly?" Emily's heart cracked. She turned fully to the child and said, "No, you are rare. You are strong. And someday, someone will look at you and say, 'You made me feel brave.' But until then, I will." The little girl wrapped her arms around Emily, tears soaking her shoulder. And in that moment, Emily knew. This was what it was all for. Not fame, not applause, but to reach one person still sitting where she once sat, still afraid to be seen. Months later, Emily released a small book. Not a bestseller, not a grand release, but it was real. It was titled, "The Scar That Stayed and the Strength That Grew." Keanu wrote the foreword. This story began in a cafe, with coffee and quiet, and a girl who didn't know the world was waiting for her light. She didn't hide it forever, and because of that, thousands now walk a little taller. Thank you, Emily, for showing us what true courage looks like. She never became a celebrity. She didn't want to, but she became something far more powerful. Mirror, a voice, a lighthouse for those still lost at sea. And every now and then, when fear crept back in, she would sit with a cup of coffee, unfold that old note from Keanu, and remind herself, "You are not the scar. You are the girl who stayed, the girl who chose to shine anyway."